The U.S. debt. The U.S. debt, as you know, is on an unsustainable path. Now, those aren't my words. Those are actually Jerome Powell's words, chair of the Federal Reserve. So super important. And it's not the first time either. It's not the first time he said it. As you guys know, we got the terrifying Trump tariffs still going on, and it actually has escalated to higher levels if you did not know. And we have BRICS killing the dollar, right? We're not talking about actual bricks banging on dollars. I'll explain that to you. That's incredibly important. And the Fed isn't doing anything with rates. Why? Right? The next meeting is May 7th. So what's the percentage that they're actually going to take rates down? Let's cover that. So let's keep going, man. Is the dollar collapsing? We need to know that. We need to know right now. Is it going to collapse in front of us? Is it going to in the next 5 years, 10 years, 50 years? We don't know, but we do know that China just dumped 53 billion of US debt, which people don't know that China and Japan hold a lot of US debt, And when they hold it like that, they are sometimes in control because they hold so much of XYZ, right? All right, we'll get into that. Look, we'll get into that, but look, like I mentioned before, BRICS is moving to gold. I mentioned that last week. That's something to look at. We have gold hitting new highs, so we're going to talk about that as well. And at the same time, the tariff war is going up, and China is not backing down. I don't know if you saw it. They said, we've been here for 5,000 years. We do not care about y'all. So we have trade barriers, and that's really triggering Wall Street, right? As we've seen with uncertainty. Markets don't like uncertainty. I've been telling y'all, a lot of this is predictive. There are black swans. There's human psyche in the market. But we like consistency. We like some type of notion of where we may be going rather than this chaos that we got going on. But look, if you're not paying attention, your portfolio, your job, your career, whatever it is, your entire financial future could get difficult if you're not paying attention to what's going on currently this week, last week, right, the week before, and what's coming up as well. We have to have that outlook to protect ourselves financially. It's important. We don't want to mess up, especially if I've been calling this for over a year now. I've been calling recession. I've been calling the dip. I've been calling, hey, Jamie Dimon just sold a bunch of stocks. Warren Buffett sitting on a bunch of cash. Mark Zuckerberg. Look, big names. Anyways, look. If you didn't know already, welcome to Military Wealth Club. I'm Mercedes The Military Realtor, and as a service member homeowner that has served in your boots before, I help you use your VA loan benefits to save money, energy, and time. And that's it. We're just creating wealth and security for yourself and your family. That's the whole point. Go enjoy yourself, right? Get some investments, enjoy yourself, whether that's with your family, whether that's you traveling, single, whatever it is, right? We want to get out of this 9-to-5 rat race. And yes, that includes military. Yes, that is, you still have a golden set of handcuffs in the military. It's one of the last great pensions other than Fortune 500 and Fortune 500. But we want to get you out of that eventually, right? Eventually you got to retire out. Eventually you got to figure out who you are. You got to find hobbies, and you got to figure out how to make some money, how to make some investments, and how to not lose them. So let's get going already. Look, let's get started, man. Number one, the Gold Rush 2.0, right? The Gold Rush 2.0. We got China and BRICS that are ditching, which China is a part of BRICS, but I'm not going to get into that. They're ditching the dollar. If you didn't know, they're ditching the dollar. It's been years in the making. Okay? But the question is U.S. dominance over? So we have China aggressively stockpiling gold, adding over 225 tons in the last year. While BRIC nations, which includes, I'm not going to say is, but includes Russia, Brazil, India, South Africa, they're actively testing gold-backed systems to settle trade, like oil, bypassing the dollar entirely, which is what this has been leading up to, and is why America has had a great conversion rate is because of the dollar dominance. That's it. That's it. You guys, I'm preaching on my soapbox. You guys already know how I feel about that from previous episodes. But is it coming to an end, right? So this global, the term for it is de-dollarization, right? This move is being, I'm not going to say sparked, but there's a little bit of movement with 53 billion, like I mentioned, from China being offloaded, right? 50 billion and 30 billion by Saudi Arabia. Okay, so this signals a potential seismic shift away from U.S. financial control. That's a big deal. A lot of people don't realize that all the wars, all the major wars, had influence from the banking sector. Banking and trade is huge. It's everything. Look in your history books. The Silk Road. You had people traveling by ship for everything, to trade everything. Think about that. It's wild, right? And it's still very prominent today. How do we bank? How do we trade? It's all connected system. And the U.S. has benefited over the last about 60 years, 1944, over the last 60 years over this dollar dominance where all other countries are using our dollar to trade with, right? Makes you think about some of these countries that had and have resources that we went over to go pretty much deliver freedom and democracy to, and then we told them, hey, you can only do deals in the dollar, right? And they're doing billions and billions and billions of dollars. Now, imagine a world where the US dollar is no longer on top. We got nations like Russia, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Brazil, China, and more. There's more countries being added to BRICS. Just kind of encounter of how we're adding countries to NATO, right, to the UN, to the EU. We got the same thing going on. People were saying at first that BRICS is just an economic type of coalition, and I was telling people, look, when it comes to money, people will come together. The enemy of an enemy is a friend. And people were saying, well, Russia and China, they have so much beef, they're never gonna. I'm like, look, they haven't. They will put that to the side if they wanted to come take care of America, right? Let's put that into consideration. So look, imagine a world with the dollar not being on top, not having that high conversion rate anymore where you can go to XYZ country and you're living like a king necessarily, right? The dollar's inflating, it's losing its power, it's losing its dominance over time. It's not going to be overnight, but over time, right? So it's not just talk, but they're dumping billions in US debt, and they're doing gold settlements, and they're working a new central digital currency. So something to think about there on the grand scheme, right? And as nations build these types of sovereign settlement funds, how is this fundamentally going to rewire global finance? And how may it touch your investments and the long-term stability of the U.S. economy, right? Even if you're sitting on cash right now, it's not just that. It's the de-dollarization, inflation. You shouldn't be sitting on cash anyways. You shouldn't have a bunch of money under your mattress, right? Look, you want to have some cash on hand for emergency? I get it, 1,000%. Everything else needs to be placed in a high yield savings account or invested, whatever you like, but something that's still liquid but still earning money for you by whoever's the custodian of it at that time. That's all I'll say on that. All right. Look, as we know, we have the trade war exploding. As we know, China and U.S. are slapping crippling tariffs, right, from 125%, 145%. We're seeing even higher. And at this point, does it even matter? Is recession incoming? So what's happening? All right, U.S.-China trade conflict has gone nuclear, with the U.S. imposing tariffs up to 145%, all right, and China retaliating with 125% on American goods. Now, this escalation this whole week has led to a lot of stuff. It's led to luxury companies taking a hit. You have Chinese companies explaining how these 35,000 Birkin bags, right? These $35,000 bags are really worth $1,400 when you break everything down. And you have some companies too saying, hey, let's work directly and bypass all of this BS. Let me work with you and I'll sell you whatever, right? Great product, whatever it is, but I'm going to sell it through another avenue, another channel to you at a great price. And they're kind of backdooring the luxury market, and a lot of the luxury market is held up by American culture and stuff like that. So that does affect us. It definitely does affect us. But wow. And we have potentially 104% tariffs on autos effective in May, right? So think of auto vehicles, 104% tariff. All right. This directly impacts everything from consumer prices to Fed policy, with the chair, Jerome Powell, saying warning of inflation risks because of that. And now that's a huge deal. And I know Trump was talking about putting a pause on it and not on specific items, including autos, because we're going to take a big hit on that. If and we're going to take an extremely big hit on that. You have to think about it. Right? Where are all these vehicles coming from? How many plants do we actually have where we manufacture here? What vehicles are known to actually last incredibly long and are cheap on parts and have great tech? Not a lot of them are American. I'll just say that. But look, with both of these folks, right, China and US, digging in and deploying economic weapons beyond tariffs, how deep do you think this trade war is really going to get in these trenches? Could it be a next global recession? We've heard indicators of Germany, other European countries, Japan, also China, having different types of economic turmoil and issues, whether that's in real estate or whether that's in their financial markets. So is this, all of our systems are connected as well. So we have to think, is this a global recession, a global downturn, also with the conflict coming into banking and trade at the same time? Now, you have to think about, we're coming from COVID just a few years ago, and employment was super high, and some would say that that was a ploy by China to get ahead, to disrupt the system. And look at where we're at now, right? Look at where we're at now, where before COVID, Trump was running a trade war. People don't remember that. Trump started the trade war. All right, 1718. He started the trade wars. Then we had a break, obviously, change administration. We have COVID. Change administration. We have COVID. So think about it. If you're China, if you're number two, wouldn't you do anything to shake up the game? To just, look, I'm just going to shake up the whole game, but because we maybe possibly deployed it, weren't they so quick? Didn't you think that was so weird, that how quick they were and how thorough? I don't know. If I were number two, if America were number two, America would do that. That's all I'm saying. You know, America has also done other things. Look into history. I'm not going to mention too many things here, but you know, airplanes and steel beams, you know, some things with the harbor back in Hawaii. Just think about all this stuff, right? And how war came afterwards. So anyway, back to the main topic though. I wouldn't put it past China to try to shake up the board to get into to go from number two to number one, to have a chance over the, just accelerate the timeline, because they've gone to number two and they've climbed the rung over the last 4 or 5 decades steadily. So instead of maybe they would foresee, hey, we'll get a number one position in, let's say, 20, 25 years, 30 years, maybe. They're just saying, screw it. Let's just do it now. Let's tango right now. They're pointing in the middle of the ring. They're just like, nah, screw it. We're gonna roll the dice right here. Either we're gonna hit it big or not. And if you didn't see that video clip of that one gentleman saying, China's been here for 5,000 years. We don't care what the U.S. is doing. U.S. doesn't even have that many hundreds of years on the books. So what do you think? Do you think they're really going to back down? Do you think the Chinese are going to back down in this trade war? And if not, who do you think is really suffering the most? We have to think about, China produces the most, and their sellers are almost 50% of Amazon sellers. Right? America is a consumer economy. Look at our GDP. What do we produce? When you think of America, what do we produce? I think of content, culture, really. That's cultural influence. That's as much. So yeah, I'll leave you with that question. Now we have to think about, why is the Fed paralyzed right now? Why are they not doing anything during these trade wars? Well, Jerome Powell saying, hey, we're not going to be affected by politics. That's just not what we're doing. It's economics and data. That's what they've talked about, right? And this seems like Powell versus Trump, right? On inflation and tariffs. But it's not necessarily like that. All right, Joe. The show continues. So, with the Fed paralyzed, we have pretty much Trump versus Jerome Powell. We have the Federal Reserve Chairman, Jerome Powell. All right, I've said it 1,000 times, so y'all know Jay Powell, that's who we're talking about. All right. He urges patience on the rate cuts, despite 3% inflation, right, which is a 7-month high. And it's Trump has expressed from the beginning that he has had issues with Jay Powell. He said it. That's it. Right? Doesn't like him. But he can't influence his decision. Jerome Powell's looks like he's not budging about it. He doesn't want to get bullied, knows he really can't. But he did mention that they may be looking into, not they, but there's a little bit of suspense of changing of rules and regulations, which is very suspicious. I'll just leave that. I'll just leave that there. But look, the Fed is caught between political pressure, right, and economic data. Like I said, you got Trump over here and you have the actual data, which that's what the Federal Reserve is sticking to, is the data. They're not trying to be affected here by this person in office and what they think. That is not how it goes. That is not how it goes. But we'll see at the May meeting, right? May 7th is the next meeting. And the rates for that, actually, we'll cover that later, but there's a percentage right now of a possible rate cut. And I'll say this, it is a double-digit percentage. I'll say that. I'll just leave it at that, and we're actually going to cover it later. We'll see. We'll see. And is the data good, too, right? A lot of the data that they're pushing out to us, necessarily I don't trust it 1,000%, right? And they make these revisions months later, but they do this really to calm the public, right? If we actually knew what was going on, a lot of the public would go through hysteria and the markets would really anarchy, chaos type stuff. So that's why there's a lot of stuff that they can't tell us and they have to ease us into it. That's why on average they tell us that we've entered or we're entering a recession 18 months after the fact. After the fact, we got main indicators, right? We got recession indicators last year and people still, no, what recession? You know, I'm not feeling that. Okay. All right, anyways, but that's that. But other than that, look, we already talked about gold, but I want to come back to it. Gold is doing great, but we have to realize, and I won't say but, look, and we have to realize it's one of the most prominent assets over time. It's retained its value. It has technical use as well in technology, and it's used by currencies as backing. We have BRICS loading up. We have gold reserves, right, that we may actually revalue, which would be a big deal, which would be a very big deal. So, as we know, we're not us, well, a lot of the world is de-dollarization, and they're using gold as backups. They're dumping a lot of treasuries, they're using gold as backups, they're testing on cryptocurrencies, and they're also just testing new banking systems, right, for settling payments. So that is something that we're tracking every single week, and it is a big deal. Now, how can that affect us locally? Well, look, all of this trickles down to macroeconomics and then to microeconomics and what's going on locally. Now, the big oil may not necessarily affect the price of your home. Let's say if there was an oil trade war big enough, right, that could possibly affect global economies, could possibly affect our economies, right, and down the line could affect interest rates, inflation, and then maybe you can't move out of your house, or you can, or now your home is devalued a little bit compared to what it was. I won't necessarily say devalued, but now has a different value, right? So all of these things connect, and that's why I find them all interesting more than sports teams, more than stuff like that, because this does affect us globally. And if we can see these things coming, pause, a year or 2 years or 5 years out, we are prepared. So a lot of people aren't talking about commercial real estate and the possible crash alert of $1.3 trillion. A lot of it's unrealized gains because it's still on the books, but the banks are at risk. Is this another 2007-08 type of bailout, but now it's commercial instead of residential? Now that would be a big deal. But right now we have 1.3 million of commercial real estate debt that is facing refinancing by the end of 2025. Right? So they most likely started these projects in 2020, 2021. They were getting super, super low rates. Money was cheap. They started the project and the waves turned, and now they're in a pinch, right? Kind of. So that's an opportunity for one person and not an opportunity for another. So that is something to think about. But potentially, borrowers need to stomach interest rates that are 2 to 3 times higher than their original loans. 2 to 3 times. Imagine that you have a 2%, now you're going up to 6%, right? That can make or break a lot of deals for some people. A lot of people, 6, 8, 10, 12, they can afford that all day, right? So that's something to consider. Now, 2 to 3 times higher than their original loans, right? Defaults are already surging in major downtown office markets. New York, specifically New York City, Chicago, and San Fran. And the pain is spreading to retail, even multifamily, in some of the Sun Belt cities. And so if we think about New York City, Chicago, and San Fran, we think of commercial downtown, where we're talking a lot of office space. Yeah, we have rates. We have rates, of course. But we have to think about maybe why aren't these spaces bringing enough money to stay afloat, right? To possibly accommodate this change in rates when they come up to refinance, right? Are they close, or are they not even close to that? Are they not producing revenue, right? Maybe they're not renting. Maybe they're not leasing their spaces. And this is that post-COVID, we have to think about, we had a big shift to people working from home. Big shift. And we have a big shift as well into AI. So now you don't have all these people at desk. So combining those two things really spells out commercial real estate is in trouble, specifically the office space. And we have seen family offices, which are these huge families that come together, and they come together to invest their money wisely, right? The best way is possible. And a lot of times they choose to buy stuff like this, 50 cents on the dollar. Imagine getting an office building in New York City for 50 cents on the dollar. You may be able to convert it into apartments, condos, high rises, whatever you want to call it. And about 50% of office spaces can be. At the same time, depending on the area, depending on the building, right, demoing and rebuilding could possibly be cheaper. Or if it's not going to housing, it could go for possible data centers as well in major cities, right? Major distribution hub to have a data center in downtown. An office space is most likely already wired and has a lot of access. Maybe something to think about, right? Maybe something to think about. But look, remember 2008? This isn't just empty offices like we're talking about. It's a ticking time bomb for the regional banks that have these loans, right? That have loans that they originally cut them and now they're looking to mature, right? So who is holding the debt? This is hot potato. I tell people all the time, a lot of things are hot potato. Who is holding the bag last? And then you look in the bag and the bag is empty. It's gone to everyone else. They took their money out and you're holding an empty bag. So you have Goldman Sachs warning of a fragile sector. And as defaults rise, you have companies, huge companies like Blackstone, that swoop in to buy distressed assets like this because it's distressed because it's going under its refinancing period and it's maturing. They're in hot water. Look, remember 2008? This isn't just about empty offices, right? We're talking about maturing. One, the maturing of the loans of these offices. Number two, are companies leasing these offices? Are there actual bodies? And number three, why aren't there bodies? We know there aren't bodies in there. Why? Are companies laying off humans due to recession or due to AI upgrades, right? But look, buying an office building for 35, 50% off is pretty awesome. So if that opportunity is there, you may be able to snag up a deal on something. But this is usually with larger office spaces. But you never know, there may be something local in your area. But there's so much debt that has to get refinanced, right? Or the people holding the bag, holding the loans, are going to be in hot water. To what extent, right? Enough to put them out of business, and then they get consolidated and absorbed by JP Morgan Chase, Blackstone, other companies, right? I don't know. Something to consider though, right? Big bank taking little bank through a trickle down effect, and how these domino effects really kick everything off, right? COVID was a big change, but that was a big push getting everyone out of the office. We've seen a lot of the work from home callbacks happening, but these companies are just figuring it's either cheaper to have people work at home or cheaper to replace them with AI. And then blame the replaceable of AI on something else, on the recession or whatever, right? Something to consider. Now, if you don't know this company, I think you definitely should, because it's one of my favorites, especially when it comes to defense, right? But Palantir, it is a war machine. Crazy. It's a war machine. But billions are pouring into AI for their battlefield dominance. And I tell you, take a look at these companies that have government contracts. I'm telling you, especially in this AI cybersecurity space, everything is going digital. Everything has a signature. Everything can be hacked. Everything can be monitored. So it's incredibly important. So let's talk about what's actually happening. So we have the defense tech giant Palantir, which is securing a massive Pentagon contract of 1.2 billion, 460 million, 180 million to deploy its AI-driven battlefield intelligence logistics platforms across the U.S. military, right? And it passed NATO's successful trials, and their tech offers real-time command-fused AI predictions, right? So if you ever maybe worked with Blue Force Tracker, you may know, I'm not going to say too much, you may know about stuff like that, about battlefield tracking of allies, of your own folks, and of enemies. But this is real-time, actionable stuff that is helping us out there on the battlefield. You have platforms like Gotham and Foundry. Some people know about that stuff, but really, really interesting stuff. Worked. Yeah, next topic. Yeah, so, but look, this isn't science fiction. This isn't science fiction at all. Palantir's AI is already enhancing battlefield decisions, doing its own very smart targeting, very smart predictions, very smart analysis, which some of it may be wrong sometimes, but it's powering a lot of stuff. I'll kind of leave it at that on the stuff, because we start getting into some stuff I don't want to poke the bear into. All right, but look, do your own research. All right, we have Palantir stock surging from up 9% and 6% recently, and they got the deal. I'm telling you, it's all in the deal. So I leave you with this. Do you think we're gonna go into more war conflicts or less over the next who knows 5 years, 2 years? Yes or no? I'll leave it at that. I'll leave it at that. All right. And we really have to think about the time that we're in. Look, it's 2025. We're not in the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s anymore, but we are in a Cold War, and that is the AI Cold War. China's next step is pretty much sidestepping all U.S. products, all of them. Right, so we're making the big divide right now. Now it's the AI space race / the Cold War. So the global AI arms race just got more intense as China's DeepSeek claims its AI model matches ChatGPT, which they said, and that was a big shock. That was a big shock. But now we're finding out that they're being made with slightly adjusted NVIDIA chips, and they're looking at just making all their stuff in-house. I'm sure that's been the whole goal for about the last few years as well, is them doing that, and we just realized that about last year and started dumping tons of money into making our own stuff. We're using possibly Chinese electrical systems, electrical grids, all these switches that may remotely be able to be turned on and off, or they're on a timer to turn off. one small little thing. So we really have to think about what parts we're using and where they're coming from, and the intention behind it. If we're in a Cold War and we're in a space race here over AI and semiconductors and chips and stuff like that, we really have to think about that. You didn't think it was weird last year? The weather balloon, the derailments, you got the ship going under the bridge, right? And then the drone stuff, the helos, a lot of weird stuff is going on out there. Do not get distracted, all right? Do not get distracted with the weird stuff. Pay attention to where the money's going, all right? And it's going into semiconductors, I'll tell you that much. But look, this affects us because a lot of us have investments in semiconductors in companies like NVIDIA, ASML, TSMC, AMD. I can go on and on and on. But we have to pay attention to this. And our BRS and TSP accounts. Some of us have those accounts, and these sectors are in those accounts, and you could choose your different funds. Get out of the G fund, I'll tell you that much. But I made a lot of money in the small cap fund. That was a nice run up, but you have to know where we're at in the cycle and move your funds accordingly. But that's why you're watching the show. All right, so look, China's gaining. China has been gaining and closing that AI gap, and they're leveraging technology. Obviously, they steal a lot of technology, sure, but look, what does America not do? So look, can we maintain our tech edge? That is the big thing, and I want you to think how. I'll keep it simple for this one. Do you think we're going to be using more or less tech in the next 2 years? Do you think there's going to be more electrical devices, more tech in the world? Yes or no? That's overall. It doesn't have to be necessarily in your household, but you just think humans are going to develop more things that require electrical builds and power. Even the city, right? Street lights, not necessarily street lights, sorry, but cameras and sensors and Wi-Fi everywhere. Do you think we're going to have more tech? Yes or no? And then once you answer that, think about who makes that tech. That's the second question. All right. Look, we have the crypto crackdown. All right, once again, not that this isn't Sam Bankman-Fried again, but look, the IRS is targeting your wallet, your crypto wallet. The SEC is banning staking. And is privacy dead? Right? I thought the whole concept of crypto in the beginning was to have privacy, but at the same time using the blockchain, but you have privacy in a way. And then all these crypto institutions pretty much were being stood up as banks, right? You have the crypto.com arena and that whole company. So we went from wanting to be not centralized to being exactly centralized, right? Where it's literally just a digital bank. So we got duped, right? So what's happening? Well, the U.S. government is tightening its grip on crypto. All right. And look, here's my thing with crypto is they've said that it's for criminal activity, it's for this, it's for that, it's for all these things, and then they choose to then load up a bunch of crypto. Larry Fink and they have an ETF, and now you can invest in Bitcoin, and they're looking to move that towards your 4K, right? Your investments. They see something that the people want, they figure out how to monetize it, and then they let us play the game. First they say no, it's illegal, then they realize okay, there is actually a lot of demand, and then they figure out how to make money off of it, how to control it. They set up the game, then they let you play, right? Examples, alcohol and the marijuana industry. That's all I'm saying. But look, the IRS is proposing invasive rules that are forcing brokers, even wallet apps, to report your transactions to close a $28 billion tax gap. $28 billion. That's not that much. We owe $36 trillion in debt. See, look, they want to tax us all day, every day. They want to say, no, we want to reduce taxes. No, they're coming to tax you on they would tax you on the amount of breaths you took every day if they could. If you took over the median amount in your area. I don't know. Look, I'm just telling you. But look, the SEC is also hitting major exchanges with cease and desist orders banning popular staking services. I love staking my crypto. It's the best high yield savings account ever. Why not? But they're trying to say they deem it an illegal security. All right, look, they're just haters. Look, they're just haters, man. The IRS, bunch of haters, all of them. The whole government, more haters. Those are professional haters. Look, I'm gonna just say that. I'm gonna just say that. But look, these regulators, they're deploying AI tracking and enforcement actions to catch us on all of our taxes in crypto. All right. Now, do you think are we heading towards a future where crypto loses its core promise of privacy? Because that was the whole thing. Didn't want a central bank. We wanted our privacy. We wanted to be able to do business how you want to do business easily. No KYC. I don't gotta have a license. I don't gotta have this. You can set up a wallet and move money quickly. And that's what I love about crypto is that it is so instant. It is so fast. And the fees to transfer are so cheap. Aren't you tired of overdraft fees, transfer fees? It takes 3 to 5 days, but we'll send it to you today for 10% of whatever you're sending. Aren't you tired of that? Right? We had our own crypto network with our own nodes where we could send each other money, and we have a blockchain where everything's recorded and double checked by all the nodes and nothing can get hacked. We had our own freedom. And then we let the banks, we let the government in, and they're ruining crypto. I really see this neopunk future where we have where you can kind of have crypto as cash in a way, but like you have your own devices, like that's not on your phone, so that they can't track you. And so I could still give you whatever Bitcoin, right, if I see you on the street or something like that in 10, 20 years or whatever, privately. I really want to look into that because it really just feels like crypto is digital money. That's what it is. And literally, we have digital money now with the banking ledger system that we have. You think that $100 that your grandma sent you through Western Union or through your bank, right? Do you think that's actual $100 that they mailed over? It's not. It's not. So look, I'm telling you, they told us that the game was illegal. They figured out how to monetize it, how to control it, which they're still doing at this point. They're still doing. And then when they're ready, they'll roll it all out and we'll be all digital. You'll have a digital US dollar, something like that, a digital yen probably, or we may consolidate down to one system or a few non-country controlled systems. We'll see how it shakes out. We'll see how it shakes out. But look, one thing I want to let you know, if there's one thing I want to let you know, is to make sure you tap that like and that subscribe button right there. Tap it. Wherever you're watching, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, subscribe, follow, it doesn't matter. Look, stay up to date. I make this content every single day, specifically for you. Yeah, for you. I'm trying to help you out. That's as simple as it is. So let's keep it moving with this info. I'm trying to have dinner. Man, I'm trying to have dinner. But look, we have veteran home buyers feeling betrayed. The VA loan nightmare surge. We're talking a little surge. All right, delays and denials. I hate delays. It sounds like everything with the VA is just delays and denials, right? Like not just the VA home loan. I mean, that's very rare, I'll say, in a way for people that are prepared. But more when it comes to VA medical, right? VA healthcare, delays and denials. We don't like that. But regardless, we have veterans that are facing issues with their housing, but they're being rejected VA loan offers due to things about delays and appraisals. So this is a stigma in the real estate industry that I noticed from the first day. It was realtors don't like to work with VA loan clients. Let me reword that the right way. Realtors that are working with listings, right? So they're an agent, let's just say in this case, they're an agent for someone that wants to sell their home. They may not like a buyer that comes with the VA loan. And because there's a stigma usually on the appraisal process has a little bit more flexibility, and the sellers necessarily don't like that. The seller's listing agent doesn't like that. And cost and fees. Many times, some of the costs and fees associated with the home buying process will get paid out by the seller. And if the listing agent wants to get highest and best net for the seller, they may choose to not a VA loan because that VA loan homeowner may need concessions to actually close the deal. Right, and that could be, my last client got almost in this case almost 20,000 in concessions, right? They may not want to consider that as a listing agent. So on many listing contracts, seller has to choose, am I okay with doing a conventional loan, right? With selling this property to someone with a conventional loan, or with the FHA, or with a VA, or other, or cash. They may be only open to cash offers, and that is their choice. That is their choice. So look, this stigma with the appraisals, there's more flexibility on the appraisals, and you may have more time to do an appraisal, which the sellers don't like. They want to be on their little timeline, but sometimes we get a little bit extra time because finding a VA appraisal that can do that property may be difficult. And that's it. So those two things. Don't deny VA loan, folks. Please hear them out. At least accept their offer. Take a look at it. Don't just apply this stigma over all of them. Don't have this stigma that all of us are poor, or we don't have good credit, or we don't have anything like this. Look, VA loan folks are some of the best folks to give loans out to, and to sell properties, and to buy properties from. That's all I'll say. So you realtors out there that are putting bad stigmas into your client's ear about the VA loan, please don't do that. Explain what you got to explain to them 1,000%, but do not steer them the wrong way. That's all I'll say about that. We're not gonna beat that horse. Oh man. Now, do y'all think we have a housing horror show going on right now with affordability hitting a 40-year low despite rates dipping? How do we have rates dipping, but we have affordability at its lowest in 40 years? Right now, what is affordability? Affordability doesn't necessarily mean just the home prices, but we're looking at what can the people afford based off of what their income is, what they're making, and the local prices. Is this affordable for the local economy here? Is this $1 million house, is this affordable? If they're all $1 million houses, is it affordable for the local economy? I recently read an article about Steamboat where there were two folks that they passed up on a job making six figures there because they, even with those jobs, they couldn't afford to live there. Now that's a little wild. I mean, it happens in places like that. I'm not gonna necessarily call it a complete ski town, but yes, it pretty much is. But it happens with places like that. Now, look, despite the small blip in the mortgage rate dip below 7%, right? And it is below 7% right now. It is below 7%, especially for VA, and we're gonna cover that rate later. I think we're in the 6.3s, but I'll tell you exactly what it is in just a little bit here. But look, the dream of homeownership is becoming a nightmare for some folks. I'm working with clients right now on buying properties, okay? So please do not listen to all the headlines of, like we're talking about, a housing horror show. Just look, the market can work depending on where you're buying and what you're trying to buy and how you're trying to buy it. But look, we hit 40-year lows in affordability. How do we come back from that? We have a 40-year low in housing affordability. Okay, like I said, affordability comes through the price to acquire the property. I'm not going to say just purchase price, and what you're making. So if you can't afford the $500,000 house, maybe you got to get a cheaper house, right? But at what point is it find a cheaper house? And at what point is it increase wages? Everyone wants to talk about inflation, this, that, tariffs, this. Let's increase wages. We're increasing tariffs. Forget tariffs. We need to increase wages. People need to get paid. What's going on here? I don't get it. America first, but we're not paying Americans fair wages. We're sending jobs abroad, doing them online, virtually paying people $4 or $5, but we're America first, right? I want you to ask your realtor if you care. I don't know. Look, I just think it's weird how people want to say America first all day. I'll pay a little bit more for American services and products. No, you won't, Bob. You're not doing it now. Why would I think you're going to do it after the tariffs? You're still not going to do it. If you didn't do it before, you weren't doing it after. Right? That's why I think it's specifically important to work with military. Like, that's my choice. And anything I do, I always try to choose a military-owned company, veteran-owned company, whatever it is. No matter how well the economy is doing or not. That just tells you something. And look, right now, a lot of those people still are trying to buy cheap products. They're still not trying to pay the American price products. And that's a shame. That's a shame, because they're just hypocrites. They're not really on board with being America first here. So why aren't we paying our people more money? Why aren't we setting them up to have wealth? Well, because it doesn't make these corporations money to set us up like that. For us to retire at 45, 50 with money, working passively. They need you to bring in your 40-year-old butt that's got 2 or 3 kids and a partner to come work every single day until you cannot physically anymore. They have to milk you dry. That's just how this system is made. So I ask again, why don't we increase wages? Increase wages. We got inflation going up at 2%, right? That's their target. That's the wild thing too. They've convinced us that inflation is normal, which it is for a fiat currency, but that this is the best route. That this is that other things shouldn't be changing at the same rate either, like your wages. If the dollar is inflating at 2%, why am I not getting a raise at least 2%? Why are my taxes still the same amount? Why is this? Why is it right? No one's really addressing the real issues here. We want to talk about an affordability crisis. Let's talk about a wage crisis. Let's talk about a health crisis. Let's talk about an education crisis. Let's talk about a mental health crisis. We've got all these other crises, but the things we actually need to address. Affordability. What are y'all gonna do? We need to build more. The builders don't want to build. Who are they gonna lend to? And I'm trying to figure out where are you guys getting these demand numbers? That we have this much demand, that there's an unaffordability. Well, that means that there's got to be demand. Where are we getting these numbers from if people can't afford it? I feel like demand's low. Anyways, look, the issue isn't affordability. It's wages. And it's the system that we're trapped in. That your company doesn't teach you how to break free from them, how to build up your wealth, how to invest your wealth. They want you there for 20, 30, 40 years. And they literally cannot pay you what you're worth. If you've ever done any math or taken an economy class, macroeconomics, micro, they may have covered that they have to pay you less than your worth, right? If you work at a company and you, by whatever means, you generate $250,000 for them a year in profit, right? We're tracking here. You work for a company, you make them $250 in some way, sales, logistics, whatever it is. That's how much you add to their value. $250,000 a year. And then they pay you $45K. Let's add the benefits on there too. Benefits, blah blah blah. Let's bring it up. Let's be generous. You get paid $45K. Let's add those benefits. Let's say it's $70. So you make them $250 a year, and they pay you $70 with benefits and everything. How is that a fair deal? Where's the other $180 going? Where do you think that goes? So that's the split. That is the split right there. It's not an affordability crisis. It's a wage crisis that's tied to American capitalism and what we've done over the last 60 years. Look at the difference in your spending power. People don't talk about spending power. What could a dollar buy you in 1965 versus 2025? Make that comparison. I used to be able to, hey, you work an honest job for a few years, you can have yourself a partner, you can have yourself 2 kids, you can have yourself a house and a car and a dog and a picket fence. Right? Those are a lot of the boomers. Those are a lot of the boomers out here that have most of the wealth, and a lot of it's tied in their properties, right? That's something to consider. All right, I'm gonna stop being that dead horse. Let's keep it moving. Look, we have defense stocks soaring, and I love defense. I come from military aviation. I've seen what these parts cost, and I'm telling you, it's a great investment. Look at the big heavy hitters in this space, and look at the small cap ones as well. Look at new emerging technologies. We have drone technologies, AI technologies, cyber, all of these things. Look at defense. These contracts are big, and I feel like there's a big change in powers, changing of the guard possibly. And you have Anduril, that's a new heavy hitter that hasn't IPO'd yet, but that is a number one prospect. Number one, I'll just say that. But look, who's cashing in on all this? All right, we got defense contractor stocks that are going crazy in the UK and NATO members, right? We got Poland and Lithuania that are dramatically boosting military spending up to 30%, right? I wonder why with what's going on under there. But that's why I pose the question. It's as simple as this. Do you think we're going to have more military involvement in the next year? 2 years, 3 years, 5 years? Think about it. The answer is yes. America's been not at war for what, 14 out of our entire existence, 14 years, 18 years, something like that, out of our total existence. We pulled out of Afghanistan, kind of the Middle East, and then we just took the war to Ukraine, and now we're fighting in Gaza, right? So we're stimulating, right? We're getting these missiles out, we're getting these rounds out, we're selling them to whoever, blah blah blah, all these things. I'm not going to say too much there. But look, war is profitable. War is profitable. For some. All right, for some. Usually the winners and the companies that play both sides. Do your research on that. Google right now. What companies played both sides of World War One and World War Two? Do your research. But anyways, look, the Army is planning a next-gen drone fleet to replace helicopters, and India is strategically offering cheap loans to steal Russia's arms clients. Look at India being sneaky. Look. And India and China, they don't jive too well. But look, regardless, the arms industry, the defense industry, it's going to go bananas. I'm telling you. It's going to be 01, 02, 03, 04 all over again. And those companies were making crazy money. So just think about that. All right, look. And we have to ponder, as nations put billions into the defense industry, once again, advanced weaponry, all that drone technology, AI, right? Where is this going to lead us to? And who really benefits from this? Just think about that. It's not necessarily America. I can't have you just invest in a USA stock, USA ETF index fund. When it comes to defense, who are we thinking about? Who is this really going to benefit? And that's why I asked you, do your research, right? Look who supplies both sides of the fence in a conflict. Because if you're supplying both sides, you're making money. You don't care who wins at the end of the day. They both blow themselves up good or not good. I don't know. So just think about that. Oh man, look, we have the rise of the machines. Is AI stealing your white-collar job? Well, I mean, it's possible. Look, you've watched Terminator, I hope. You've watched The Matrix, I hope. The answers are in here, I'm telling you. Look, the AI revolution is rapidly moving from hype to hiring. And they're doing the hiring too. The AI is doing the hiring. They're doing whatever they want now. This is iRobot. Someone call Will Smith. We need to slap these robots back to being Roombas. All right, look, man. Look, please, did you watch Terminator? Please, bro, we cannot fight these robots. They're so strong. They don't gotta go to the gym. They're strong, bro. Man, look, imagine getting slapped by a robot. Not even Will Smith, a robot. You got pimp slapped by a robot walking by because of whatever. Anyways, look, we got thousands of tech layoffs stemming from COVID, right, of course, but now it's more of the AI revolution. You got companies like Microsoft, Google, and Amazon that are directly linked to using AI-driven productivity tools that are replacing entire departments. Okay, we're talking marketing, logistics, sales, right? When it comes to marketing, graphic design, all that stuff, gone. A lot of writers, copy, gone. But what happens when we have something like this, right? Think of the dot-com bubble, where we had a lot of these tasks being replaced with computers. At the same time, though, we did have a lot of roles come from the industry. This is water. Look, this is water. Please don't. Whew. And it's not just manual labor anymore. Yeah, we have Google DeepMind AI now outperforms 70% of human software engineers on coding benchmarks, sparking existential debates across all the professions, right? Like I said, it outperforms 70% of human software engineers on coding benchmarks. OpenAI's CTO calls it the new AI arms race. I've been telling y'all, it's an arms race, it's a cold war, it's whatever you want to call it, but we're fighting to get compute power. We need these semiconductors, these chips, so that they can solve problems, right? So that you can have one main aircraft and you can have 5 drone aircraft flying with that main aircraft, understanding inputs, not just inputs from external of the aircraft either, but inputs right from the controller, from the main pilot, and also from some pilots back home that are communicating through some type of SATCOM, right? Compute power. We need compute power. And China has more people than us, so we have to beat them with compute power. That's the thing. China's got 3 times our population. We have to beat them in compute power. So as AI becomes more capable of performing a lot of things, from physical tasks and robots to cognitive tasks, deep thinking, complex, how do we adapt to this? That's just what it comes to. How do we adapt? Sweet Jesus. I'm dying here. Boy, someone give me a lozenge. What up? Wolf of Wall Street, Matthew McConaughey. I need some Vicks. All right, look. Look, I don't understand how we haven't talked about Trump's meme coin that he robbed a bunch of people about. But hey, look, I'm gonna leave it right there. Talk about scams. We're gonna talk about the president running a scam against American people. That's just wild. That is just wild. But whatever, I guess. Well, what else we got going on? Look, if there's one thing you walk away with, I need you to know that I love you very much, and I need you to tap that like and subscribe. Let's go. Tap the like, tap the subscribe, or the follow, wherever you're watching. Right, tap it right now. Please stay up to date with this information. Leave a comment if you have any questions about any topics that are coming up or have been presented already. We like to follow this. This is all continuing story, continuing narrative throughout USA 2025, investing in real estate, business, stocks, and finance. Let's keep it moving. What else do we got, man? We have Zillow monopoly fears. Will one giant control your home search and data? And yeah, honestly, to me, Zillow's the empire, man. As a realtor, look, we got to get away from Zillow. I'm telling you. It's sketch. Redfin as well. They're just 2 different colors, but Zillow's just wrecking the market. You have a lot of agents running to Zillow to take leads, and they're not the best quality leads. And they're not teaching you how to fish. They're not teaching you how to run your own business. They're teaching you to stay on their teat and, pay them whatever you want to pay them, whatever their split is, and take what you can get. And that's okay for some folks. They just don't jive with that type of system, and that's okay. I'm not here to talk down on realtors that do XYZ. For some folks, it's a great model, great business model. Go ahead, kill it. Just not for me. I don't agree with kind of how Zillow's just becoming such a huge conglomerate, this huge umbrella, and it's weird. It's this right here is where we have the question about America first with corporations like this, and slowly we also have MLSs, right, that are being sold. So data is important. That's why I said data. Data is incredibly important. They're studying us. They're knowing when to make calls. They're knowing when to send text messages. They're knowing what you want before you even know what you want. So be very cautious about your data, especially when it comes to Zillow. So this single extremely profit-driven company is pretty much dictating which homes get visibility and which agents are getting work. And this is centralizing the business in a way, and they're having a lot of control. And like I said, it threatens our independence as agents. It really does. And if you're not being taught how to fish, if you allow someone to feed you, you allow them to starve you. That's a bar right there. Don't forget it. Look, that's a bar right there. So look, as these tech giants are consolidating their power into our industries, what are the risks of allowing one company like Zillow to monopolize access? I don't see the benefits. I just don't see the benefits. That's all I'll say on that. Look, what else we got? Look, we have a debt tsunami, as we've talked about before, with credit card defaults hitting 10-year highs and evictions surging 28%. Should this be concerning? So we have American households, right? This isn't globally. American households are drowning in debt as credit card delinquencies rise. They hit a 10-year top, right? And we have overdue balances jumping 23% year over year. That's a big spike. So I think it's hard to really negate the recession talk with a lot of people. You may not feel it, and congratulations if you don't, but there are a lot of poor and middle class Americans that are feeling these hits. And Visa is a good company. That's all I'm going to say. You do your own research. Visa and Amex, think about it. If you have debt going up, they're charging fees, they're doing all this, blah, blah, blah. They're calling notes due. All this stuff is going on. They're making money. At the end of the day, Visa may be a good pick. So take a look at it. Take a look. Man, what else we got? Yeah, we've already talked about that, man. I'm over kind of talking about de-dollarization. Look, we get it. They don't want to do deals in our money no more. All right, we got to get over it. America is holding on so hard to the dollar, which I don't blame us. But I feel like we really accelerated the growth too fast, and we could have had a possible longer run with it instead of just trying to squeeze too much of the juice out pause too quick. You know what I mean? But let's keep going. And the tech wars, right? The chip wars, semiconductors, that's something we have to continuously follow every single week and do our research on, because I feel like it's going to take one black swan, one event to really change everything, and the whole landscape is going to slide. And I feel like that one big event is going to be China moving on Taiwan. And China moving to take Taiwan until the tariffs stuff that's going on right now. I thought China would be waiting to take Taiwan to be cordial, because all this comes back to banking and business and trade. And if we're cool on that with them, they'll make it look like they're finally making their Taiwan move without our coordination. But we have our factories up and running. We're good, China. All right, let's do the play. You can take Taiwan now. We got all the semiconductors out of there. Blah, blah, blah. You guys can use it now. We have our own factories in America. And then we continue, making chips and stuff like that. But with the tariffs and Trump's personality, it could push China to say, yeah, we're going to play hardball. And actually, we're going to take Taiwan right now. We don't care if your foundries aren't up yet. We're going to take Taiwan right now. And we're going to catch up to you and pass you in AI and chips, and then we're going to crush you because we're so ahead of you, because of some attitude. You know what I mean? That's why it's important to be tactful in certain times, where they hold so much of our debt and they have Taiwan. They could throw a rock and hit Taiwan, which they believe Taiwan is theirs. China believes Taiwan is still China and not Taiwan. So, something to think about, because if we have an instant, right, we're going through a trade war right now, and China's like, all right, keep pushing us. And if they say, you know what, forget it, we're going to take Taiwan, there goes your semiconductor business. Boom, now we're in a rush for us to build microchips here in America and try to get up to their level as fast as possible. Or we just go to war over Taiwan, right? We blow it up. We just say, forget it. If we can't have our semiconductor factories built up yet, and blah blah blah, then you can't have Taiwan either. We'll just blow it all up. And then we stall out until we have enough factories, and then we start having war and blah blah blah. Look, I served in the military. I've seen stuff behind the scenes. I worked as an electrician. I worked on drones. I've seen intel. I've seen some of the stuff, and I'm just telling you where a lot of this may go. I'm not going to say it is going to go there, but where it may go. And you have to follow the narrative and think of it as a story. I like to think of things backwards a lot of times, like I'm reading a book in reverse. And it's like, how did we get to the most worst thing ever? And it's steps, right? Look at the history of World War II and the rise of Germany. Pretty weird, but it's all steps, incremental steps. Some of them very quick, that rose very quickly in a very fast and swift amount of time. And it's scary, right? It's scary, but that's how history is. And we use this to try to interpret the data and interpret past data to see if we can have any type of general feel of where we may be going into the future and have different paths as well. And we're always updating that information with present information so we can update those paths and those possibilities, probabilities, statistics of where we may go based off of the narratives. Now there's always a black swan. That's why I always account for a grenade to get thrown into a plan, and there may be a catalyst, right? Like the movement on Taiwan, or it could be something in Palestine, or it could be something in Ukraine, it could be something in Europe, it could be something in the Americas. There could be something that happens that defies all logic and normalcy and shakes up the market and gets us going, right? Think of '01. That's it. I'll leave it there. I'm going to just leave it there. Look, I'm going to leave it there. Look, and what's going on with TikTok? All right, is TikTok being banned or not? And or is it being sold? Right? I don't know if it will actually be sold. I don't think China's going to play that necessarily, or they may still try to collect on us, or who knows. But I think it's a big deal, and a lot of people don't think it's a big deal. Why? Why would you not think that TikTok doesn't have an effect on our youth, on mindset, mental health, all of that, right? And then how they're collecting that data and using that data too. You also have apps like Pokemon Go. A lot of people weren't realizing that they banned it from being used on base. I was still in when that was going on, and people weren't allowed to use it on base because you're geo mapping. You're using your camera, you're using sensors, position, GPS, all that stuff, INS, spatial tools, all this stuff to collect all this all this data of where you're at. And it can be used for malicious activities, right? If we're going to major war with the country, they could use it for X amount of things. All right. We'll leave it there, but look, keep an eye on TikTok, on what's going on with TikTok right now. All right. Man. And look, I know it's tax season and the IRS may be coming for your money, but we really need to talk about, is America broke, right? Our debt interest payments are astronomical, and how much we're paying on the interest on our debt is surpassing what we spend on military. See? Look, and this is how they get you. We tell people all the time in the military, look, don't get high interest credit cards. Don't get a high APR vehicle loan. Don't do this stuff. Don't do Bro, we got $36 trillion in debt. And our interest is more than what we're spending on military. What? Bro, who do we owe so much money to? Oh, Japan, China, various other countries. And look, the debt has hit a terrifying milestone. All right, and I was going to mention some, I'm not going to mention it. But look, the annual interest payments that the government owes on its massive debt now officially exceeds the entire U.S. defense budget, which is a huge signal for financial crisis, all right, if you didn't know already. And this comes as federal tax revenues consistently miss targets, widening the budget shortfall to $800 billion in just quarter one. That's just Q1. All right. Now, like, well, what's this about? Okay, America's broke, but you may not be broke, right? So, what does that matter? Look, this isn't just an accounting issue. It's a flashing red indicator, a stop sign, a warning for America's long-term economic health. All right. Paying more to service debt than to fund the military raises the absolute alarm about fiscal sustainability, right? And we already got all this other stuff going on. I mean, this is a symptom and effect, but global recession, unemployment, man. Look, when the cost of borrowing is more than national defense, what do you think that means? Do you care or do you not care? You're just like, yeah, America's broke. That's fine. I've been broke too. Oh, we'll get to the first of the month and we'll be all right. Or do you think this is a signal for America's future health? Is America sustainable to be in the position of power that we have been for the next 100 years, or for your lifetime at least? It's something to think about. Something to think about. And look, with that, we got the actual Bank of America, no affiliation, right, necessarily, but their CEO is giving us a chilling warning that profits soar but recession looms. Right? Yeah, the banks may be making some money, but recession is looming for us, the American working people, the poor and the middle class, right? So they got a 10% jump in Q1 profits, Bank of America. Okay, all right. But the CEO, Moynihan, look, we're going to call you Brian. All right, that's all you're getting right now. Look, but he issued a stark warning against potentially changing economy. No duh. Like how, like, I mean, but they can't say these things. That's the thing. They say these things 2 years back behind closed doors, and then they'll say it once things come to light. Sure, sure. All right. But you made 10%. You jumped up 10% in profit Q1. I'll just say that, Brian. Probably still in your $10 million house right now or something. Good on you. Good on you. But look, bankers should get beat up. Look, I'm not liable for any of my banker friends getting beat up. I'm not going to say you deserved it. But, every couple years, why not? You get paid enough. Stop playing. Look, oh man. Now, Bank of America did say it's increasing its buffer for potential bad loans by 200 million. Now, when Bank of America CEO sounds the alarm, even though he just got good news that we have a 10% rise in profits, even with that, and he's still cautioning a poor economy, a potentially changing economy. What do you? It's like this guy still made money. You made more money, but you still. So why don't we believe him? Why is it that Americans aren't believing that we've had a hard time, that we're going into recession, we've been experiencing recession? I don't know. It's like we're always in denial, waiting till the last minute. I just don't get it, man. And we have Musk Starlink going to war. We have military expansion of Elon Musk's Starlink company. Oh man, pushing deeper and deeper, right? That's what he wants to do. He wants to get embedded into the government, make his pretty much legacy type systems, integrate them into the military enterprise. And then once they're set up and you got contracts and servicing contracts and repair contracts, it's a done deal. Your companies are going up and they're staying solid, and they may be a cornerstone in that industry for the next 10, 20, 30 years. As we've seen with a few companies, Boeing to mention one, even though it's had some pullback. But anyways, Elon, he's pushing for a deeper Starlink connection in the military, as we've seen, and wanting to get into defense communications, which I would say we vastly need. SATCOM is cool. It really is. But we do have to consider, we got like 40 kabajillion satellites out there. I feel like we're not even going to be worried about hail anymore. We're going to be worried about satellite parts like falling and running into your home. But congrats on Elon for that. So Starlink, I love Starlink. I think that's a great company. Do your own research. I'd invest in it. I don't like the guy personally. He's a little weird. I feel like his face is fake. You know, like Michael Myers. You ever seen like Michael Myers or Chainsaw Massacre? Like that's what I feel like his face is like, bro. We know you're getting work done on that thing. But look. How do we look at this from an investment standpoint? So take a look at Starlink, see if it could fit into your investment portfolio in the future. If you like it, if it makes sense to you, right? Do you think we're going to use more SATCOM, not just in military, but just as I don't know, I'm not even going to say as a country, as a race, right? Of humans. Do you think we're going to use more or less items that use SATCOM? Yes or no? And I think that'll answer your question of could this be a possible interest for your future investments? So I'll just say that. I'll leave that right there. Man. And again, another recession alarm. We have U.S. manufacturing slumping again. Not to mention jobless claims spiking. So let's take a look at what's actually happening. Well, we have red flags in the U.S. economy as crucial manufacturing sectors are contracted for the fourth consecutive month. And a worry sign of a slowdown by the last ISM report. Okay, look. Adding to these concerns, weekly jobless claims have spiked sharply for 2 weeks running, with manufacturing and tech leading the layoff surge. Manufacturing and tech. I need you to pay attention to what they're telling us right in our faces. Manufacturing and tech. Jobless claims spiking in manufacturing and tech. Why? We're being replaced by AI. Why? We're being replaced by AI. Man, I could make a whole 16 bars off of this. Like, come on. It's clear as day. Right? Marked with recession indicators, marked with coming out of COVID, marked with part 2 of Trump's trade wars. Well, what do we think is that these are not the ingredients for the best cake ever? They're just really not. It's like it's right here. It's in front of us. Right now, I ask you: are these persistent manufacturing declines and these layoffs are they early indicators of oncoming recession? Like what would you actually? Well, how about this? If you want to put this in the comments below, what would you need to believe a recession is here or incoming? Like what is it? What type of metric? What would you actually need to see for me to get across that we're going into a downturn and that we need to be prepared? You need to be prepared to maintain what you have now, and you need to be prepared to grow it as well. So not only do we not want to lose as the market's going downwards and we hit the bottom, right? We want to also be prepared to make informed decisions with our money that we do have during this downturn. Stock up, find all the deals, acquire as many deals as you can, and then hold on to them as you go upwards, right? As the market starts to turn up, and we start coming up out of this slump. And now your properties, your properties, your stocks, your crypto, your businesses start to increase in value as the economy starts to turn around. We start generating more. GDP is good. Maybe we're out of the trade wars, or maybe we're not, right? Whatever it is, but we will turn around. We will turn around. And the question is, will you be prepared once we hit around the bottom to then have your cash ready or have your methods ready to acquire real estate, business, stocks, and crypto? All right? Something to think about. It's just something to think about, man. And what else we got? And we have taxing the rich before they sell. Would you want to get taxed as your asset appreciated, but you haven't had a sale event yet? A sale triggers a taxable event, but right now we have a highly controversial new Treasury proposal that aims to tax investors on the appreciation of their assets. Think of stocks and real estate, things that appreciate over time, but you still haven't sold. So it's gone up in value, it's in your portfolio, but you haven't sold it yet. right? Now, this is unrealized gains. You haven't realized it yet, or it's unrealized losses if it's on the negative side, but it's unrealized because you haven't commenced the sale of that asset, all right? Now, this is extremely different, but this could be a big seismic shift, right, in potentially forcing asset sales to cover tax bills, or drastically, this alters our long-term investment strategies because now we're being taxed as we're going on the way up. Right? And that's a big thing. What do I think? I feel like it's not gonna happen. There's too many people in politics and too many people invested. You really have to look at how are these people above you investing, and they won't attack that themselves. So if they're voting on it and they're doing it, they're not going to get rid of it. So look at all this trading stuff that's going on. There's Major Green Taylor, right? She got mentioned that she's doing really great in stocks. Coincidentally, I don't think politicians should be in stocks. I'm sorry. Shouldn't be in any stocks that you may have any type of relation or knowledge around at all. But hey, what do I know? But we do know that California is dreaming big, with the Golden State being poised to become the world's number 3 economy, right? That's wild. Number 3. I lived in California for a while. I was in Central California, in Lemoore. If you know Naval Air Station Lemoore, that's a master jet base out there. And I was also down in San Diego as well. So look, your politics about California, I'm not here to go back and forth. But look, we had a lot of people that were stationed there, and a lot of people complained about this and that in Californians. Just leave. You don't like it, just leave. I know you're stationed here. I know. But I'm sure there's someone else that would love to take your billet. Someone in Kentucky, someone in Indiana, right? Someone in BFE, if you know what I mean. Just leave. You don't like bro, just do your job and just move on and enjoy it. Like, as a state, physically, I think it's probably the best state physically. Just the takes up most of the West Coast. It has various climates. You can go ski, snowboard, and surf. You can go skate, snowboard, and surf in the same day if you wanted to. Go hike. It's beautiful. All the political stuff, and you want to talk about taxes and gas and stuff like that. Look, I get it. I'm not here but just leave. Once you get out of the military, just leave. And stop complaining. That's what we don't like. Especially in the military. They tell you 1,000 times about stop complaining. But you can't change it. You can't. But these people would not stop crying. These tears, these conservative tears of just, I hate being in California, but you love the Mexican food and you love the beach. I don't know what to tell you. Go back to where you came from then if you don't like it. Or change the laws, right? Go make change. Go pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Go vote. Go get in Congress. Go do what you got to do and just go make the change. Or just leave. That's it. You don't like California. You don't like Texas. You don't like wherever you're at. Just leave. You don't like it. You don't like what's going on in America. Just leave as well. Or make your change. Those are the two things, right? And I'm not here to oppose anyone wanting to protest or march or whatever it is, or however you want to work on the system in your way. More power to you. Whatever it is, even if it's opposite ideology and things that I don't want. What will be, will be. Go show up. Go pull yourselves up by your bootstraps. Go vote. Go do what you got to do, right? If you don't like it. But California is poised to become the world's number 3 economy. That is pretty wild. And they contribute significantly to the GDP. Dare you to take a look at the states that take in a lot of federal aid and the states that also create and add to our GDP. That's incredibly important, right? Who's actually producing and what states are actually taking the most handouts. Because a lot of people don't know that California produces a lot of the handouts for other states. People don't know that. But let's keep it moving. And surprise, the U.S. energy grid gets hacked. How is that even possible? Earlier we were talking about Chinese electrical products possibly being bugged with internal switches that could turn off remotely or turn off on a certain timer, right? Well, these cyber attacks are sparking White House security review, and it's a big deal. I'm telling you, we're using more and more tech all day, every day. A lot of it's not physical. A lot of it emits a signal and can be hacked. So cybersecurity is incredibly important in your household, on your phone. People don't run any antivirus or malware on their phone. That's incredible. The device that you're on the most, that you visit the most sites on, most likely, no protection. Y'all just raw dogging it. That's wild. But look, let's talk about the grid, okay? America's critical infrastructure vulnerability was just exposed as a cyber attack successfully hit a region of the U.S. energy grid, right? Let's see. And this prompted, obviously, national security review by the White House and the Pentagon. This is a big deal, right? What if electrical energy? Think about that. Think about you have no lights. Just lights. We'll just start with that. Just lights. For some reason. And it's not just going to be lights. A lot of people have stoves that work off of electrical power. Sensors and small little things too, right? Even if you have things that are powered with gas, you may still have sensors and switches and things that need a small amount of electrical power. And if you don't have a generator, you don't have an off-grid battery bank in your home, not just the generator, because the generator's got to run. You need to store your power somewhere. So look, a successful large-scale attack on the energy grid could plunge regions into darkness, which cripples the economy and has devastating consequences. People will die. Thousands would die if we had a huge energy grid attack that took us down, even for a day. Even for a day, there would be mass casualty all over America, and not all over, like, complete. You know what I mean? Not in every single place mass casualties. Let's take it back a second here. But it's energy. We need energy. We're having this conversation right now through energy, right? So the stakes are incredibly high, and this definitely serves as a stark reminder that we have to really protect our energy grid. We need to also revamp it, and I really believe that they're going to revamp the entire energy grid due to EV and just the higher demand for electrical, which is also introduced due to AI, data centers, all that compute power as well. So that is something to think about, and investing in those companies, right? What companies run the energy sectors in America? Do your own research. But look, if anything though, the one thing I would definitely do is tap that like and subscribe button, please, wherever you're watching. Like and subscribe, follow, stay up to date. We create content every single day and every single week, keeping you up to date on real estate, business, stocks, and finance, which includes crypto, here. All right, we make it easy for you to understand so you don't miss out, and you can retire from the military or work on a post-retirement as a veteran. Whatever it is, we're here to help you generate wealth. So let's keep moving here with this information. And we're going to dive right into our real estate and financial market update, all right? Whether you're buying, selling, or just keep an eye on the market, which you always should, right? In all economies, not just good or bad economies, you always should. Here's what you need to know. So let's go ahead and dive right in. Look, the conventional 30-year fixed mortgage is at 6.86, about 0.02 down today. All right, we have the VA loan fixed at 6.37. Now we compare that with last week, we had a drop. Last week, VA rate was about 6.45, and now we're at 6.37. So remember that, 6.37 versus a conventional loan, which you have to most likely put money down, right, at 6.86. All right, that's the power of the VA loan. So for buyers, slightly lower rates enhance affordability and increases your purchasing power, right? Just slightly lower rates, right? It's a lever, they change. Now for sellers, decreasing rates may boost your buyer's interest and potentially lead to a faster sale. So that's something to consider. Now, update on the Federal Reserve. Like I mentioned before, the meeting is on May 7th. It's on May 7th. And right now, there's a rate cut probability of just 25 basis points at 13.6%. So there's a 13.6% chance that there's a 25 basis points cut to the Fed fund rate, right? Now, buyers, a low probability of a rate cut suggests mortgage rates may remain steady, all right? Now, for sellers, rates could remain the same and buyer demand levels would stay the same. Now, pricing strategies should reflect market conditions and where the market is going. We're seeing price reductions. We're seeing price reductions. We're seeing price reductions. So there's two reasons. Well, let's start with one. There's a price reduction because there was a misprice. That leads us to one. Now, why there was a misprice, I think it falls upon the person who's pricing, of course, 1,000%. If it is their education on how to price, that is one thing. At the same time, if the market is going at a faster rate or a different direction, that's also another thing. So those are things to consider. All right, those are things to consider. Price reductions, pay attention. Pricing your property, marketing your property are the most important things in the process of listing your property. And timing. Stack those three things together. Those are the biggest issues that I see. People do poor on their listings, on their advertising, on their marketing. They're not on it. That you have to realize that once that property is listed and that counter is going, people are taking how many days that thing is on the market into consideration, taking all the advertising. Did you advertise your open house? Did you door knock before your open house? Did you make flyers? Did you put it online? Did you put it on your own website? Did you create a Google ad for it or a Meta ad for it? Are you doing all the things to really, really make your listing shine on day one? You have to make it shine on day one. You got to make it that star on day one. All right? Let's keep moving here. And look, our word of the week is loan contingency. All right, a clause in a purchase contract that allows buyers to back out of the deal if they cannot secure financing within a specific period. Now, who does this help the most? Buyers, of course, right? This provides a safety net ensuring they aren't obligated to proceed with the purchase without approved financing. And next, we got Denver market metrics. We don't have any update for this week as of right now. All right, and that's a quick update. But look, y'all know it's about that time. Drop a comment below with your thoughts on all and any of these topics, whichever one you felt that was the most intriguing, that really spoke to you, or possibly affected your investments the most, which, I mean, it should capture your curiosity and intrigue you. Put that in the comments, wherever you want. Ask whatever you want to ask. I'm here to help out, or send me a DM as well. But look, let me know what topics you want covered next week. I take suggestions all the time. And when you're ready to start your real estate journey, not if, when you're ready to start your real estate journey, visit my website, themilitary.us, to schedule a free call. Look, take care, God bless, and remember, ownership is freedom.